In this video, we're going to talk about a scary mouthful of a word. It is the subordinating conjunction. Now, I know this is the point where grammar gets kind of ugly because it's these really long words describing something. And I don't really care. I mean, if I was your teacher, I really wouldn't care if you at the end of the year called this a subordinate conjunction by accident or the subordinal. What I care about is, would you be able to understand what we're about to talk about, how dependent clauses and independent clauses work together, how you need to use commas, how certain words make an independent clause a dependent clause. That's what I care about, so that you can actually use this in your own writing. So don't freak out about the big subordinating conjunction. So what exactly is it? Well, it joins a dependent clause with an independent clause. Okay, again, you may be even put off by this a little, but just remember, independent clause is the same as a sentence. Dependent clause is not a sentence. It cannot stand on its own. So here we have some examples. Because Mike had not finished his homework. In an earlier video on dependent clauses, I showed you that by adding because to a sentence, that is a sentence that could stand on its own, but with a subject and a verb, but by adding because, we made it an unsentence, as I said, or a dependent clause. And so when we have a dependent clause that depends on something, it depends on an independent clause. That is, it needs a sentence. There's our comma at the end of the dependent clause, and here's our sentence. He was unable to play outside. Again, the word because is a coordinating conjunction, and it gives a reason. It gives us a reason for something. But again, if I just said because Mike had not finished his homework, period, that would be wrong, because that is not a sentence. It is a dependent clause, and you cannot end it with a period. You must have a comma and then an independent clause. Now, I know some of you are already saying, hey, my teacher said that you can't start a sentence with because. Now, what I think your teacher's trying to say is you can't put because in front of it, of the independent clause, Mike had not finished his homework, period. You can't put it in front of there, because now it's a dependent clause. However, as long as you put a comma and follow it with an independent clause, it is absolutely 100% fine to put because at the beginning of a sentence. So remember why that is so, because again, we only have a sentence when a dependent clause has an independent clause. Okay, look at B. Although, that's another good subordinating conjunction. There's a contrast going on here. Although she rarely studied, Maria was able to do well in her classes. So the contrast is didn't study, but did well. Again, the subordinating conjunction is although, and if it was just although she rarely studied, period, that would be wrong, because that is a dependent clause. And again, the subordinating conjunction is usually at the beginning of a dependent clause. There's the comma, and that is followed, and must be followed by an independent clause, because if it's only followed by a dependent clause, that is not a sentence. That is a dependent clause, and a dependent clause a sentence do not make. Okay, let's just take one example. The key reason is to show you this, because I think I've made my point about what a sentence is and what a sentence is not, and how a subordinating conjunction links a dependent clause to an independent clause. But it's important to know some other subordinating conjunctions, such as if, because you see if all the time. Make sure that you have that comma in there. So if you do not understand dependent clauses, here's an interesting sentence. It actually refers to what we're talking about. Comma. Here's our dependent clause. Watch the video on them again. So again, there's our subordinating conjunction. If you don't need to know the word subordinating conjunction. Just know that if you have if, you have to have a comma at some point joined with an independent clause.